I know debt is not new. For centuries, I've seen nations borrow to fund wars, infrastructure, expansion, and survival. I've seen businesses borrow to grow. I've seen households borrow to build wealth. In moderation, I believe debt fuels progress. But when borrowing expands for decades without true deleveraging, I see something larger form. I call it a debt supercycle. I know a debt supercycle is not a typical economic cycle. I think of normal cycles as lasting years. Expansion, contraction, recovery. A supercycle spans generations. I see it begin with productive borrowing, mature into financialization, and often end in a structural reset. In the early stages, I see debt rise alongside growth. I watch credit finance industry, innovation, and rising living standards. I observe productivity supporting repayment. I watch confidence build. Then I see the system evolve. I see financial markets deepen. I notice leverage becomes easier to access. I've seen asset prices start to depend on credit expansion. I've watched governments discover that deficits are politically easier than austerity. I've observed central banks learn that liquidity can postpone downturns. Over time, I've seen the economy become debt-dependent. Instead of debt supporting growth, I began to see growth depend on debt. I watch each slowdown being met with lower interest rates. I see each crisis trigger stimulus. I notice each recovery begins with more borrowing than the last. I observe debt compounding across households, corporations, and sovereigns. I now see what once required structural reform being managed through liquidity. I watch interest rates trend downward across decades. I don't think this is accidental. I understand that high debt levels cannot coexist with high interest rates for long. I see lower rates reduce servicing costs and encourage refinancing. But I also see they incentivize more borrowing. I watch the supercycle deepen. I see asset prices inflating. I watch housing markets rise. I notice equity valuations expanding. I observe bonds remaining supported by central bank demand. I sense financial stability is holding. I feel the illusion of sustainability growing stronger. But I know leverage accumulates quietly. I see public debt expanding beyond wartime levels, even in peacetime. I watch corporate balance sheets stretch. I see household liabilities growing relative to income. I watch governments roll over obligations indefinitely. I believe the risk is not immediate collapse. I believe the real risk is diminishing policy flexibility. When debt reaches extreme levels relative to GDP, I know policy options narrow. I know that raising interest rates threatens solvency. I know cutting spending risks recession. I know expanding deficits risk inflation. I see the system becoming sensitive to even small shocks. I know debt supercycles typically end in one of several ways. Inflation eroding real debt burdens gradually. I see financial repression keeping rates artificially low while growth outpaces borrowing. I see explicit restructuring reduce nominal obligations. I see a severe crisis force rapid deleveraging. I see each path redistribute wealth. I see inflation benefit debtors and penalize savers. I see restructuring harm creditors. I see financial repression suppress returns on safe assets. I see a crisis reset asset prices violently. I believe the defining feature of a debt supercycle is not debt alone. I believe it is dependency. I see markets rely on central bank intervention to remain stable. I see governments rely on refinancing rather than repayment. I see growth rely on stimulus rather than productivity. I see the system no longer expanding organically. I see it sustaining itself. I see that global debt levels today are historically elevated across advanced and emerging economies alike. I'm watching demographics shift toward aging populations and rising fiscal pressure. Productivity growth is uneven. Geopolitical fragmentation adds uncertainty. I don't believe these conditions guarantee collapse. They do, however, define late-stage characteristics of a supercycle. I know history shows long debt expansions eventually move into restructuring phases. Sometimes that transition is gradual, sometimes it is abrupt. The difference, I think, lies in policy discipline, institutional credibility, and economic adaptability. As an investor, understanding the supercycle changes my perspective. I see that asset valuations may no longer reflect organic growth alone, but also liquidity conditions. Bond yields, in my view, can be shaped as much by central bank policy as by market fundamentals. Currency stability, I believe, may hinge on confidence in fiscal sustainability. In late stages, I expect volatility to become structural. I don't expect constant chaos, but recurring instability. I anticipate policy oscillation, inflation spikes, and tightening cycles. Market euphoria gives way to correction, and I watch each wave reveal how sensitive the system has become. For me, the debt supercycle is not about panic. It's about recognizing that decades of cumulative borrowing shape the present more than any single recession. When debt defines the system, our future hinges on how that debt is managed. Will we inflate it away? Will we repress it quietly? Will we restructure it openly? Or will we grow out of it through productivity and reform? Every generation believes its expansion is different, yet I see financial history showing patterns repeating at larger scales. Debt builds gradually. Dependency grows quietly. Flexibility narrows slowly. Eventually, recalibration becomes unavoidable. The supercycle does not end because of one bad year. It ends because the structure can no longer expand without consequence. When that turning point arrives, it reshapes markets, wealth distribution, policy frameworks, and global power. Debt built the modern world. How I resolve this will define what comes next. Welcome to Cash and Chronicles, where money, power, and history collide.